Good afternoon, and thank everybody for tuning in to our third Pros in the Know podcast. This month, what we're going to focus on is home inspections, and who we have today is Gordon Law from Texas Best Inspections. And I'm going to pass the mic over to him for a second, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself and his business and how he can actually help our consumers out in the field to get their house ready for a home inspection and why we need a home inspection. So thank you very much for showing up and giving us some great tidbit over the next couple minutes here. Gordon, give us a little background on yourself.
Well, thanks, Steve. I appreciate it, and it's really good to be here with you guys, and I hope I can add some value to your business. My name is Gordon Law. We started a home inspection business about 13 years ago, based here in Flower Mound area. Love this community in this area, and love serving the whole Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. This is a family-owned business. We've had my son-in-law in our business with us and different children doing different parts of the business. We have experience in remodeling business, had a remodeling business prior to this and for multiple years. So I have a lot of background in construction and remodeling and some of the concerns that we have on homes, and so have a real good eye for it.
All right, great, which leads me to the first question of the day. I get this question awful lot in class. They ask, if it's a new home, should I get an inspection? I get that question probably 99% of the time. Gordon, how do you feel about that?
Well, I appreciate that, Steve. We don't market it typically a lot, but it's becoming more critical because we have a lot of new construction in the area. A lot of people are really comfortable doing an 11-month warranty before their warranty runs out on it with the builder. But what we find is that the value really comes from doing at least the final inspection prior to closing on the house. The value in that is that we can find things that are code related. We don't do a full code inspection, but everything's based on codes. So we find things that the builder can fix very quickly and easily. He's still got his contractors on the property out there. And he's got a vested interest in making sure that everything's taken care of and that you are a happy customer.
Now, for confusion's sake, I get this question an awful lot too. A home inspector inspects the property. Do they actually repair the issue?
The home inspectors do not do any repairs. We have no benefit in trying to do anything like that. So we are completely unbiased opinion. We are just telling you the facts about the house and the condition of the house, and so that's all we do.
So what's the most important aspects that you're looking at when you're looking at the house?
Well, here in Texas, of course, foundations are a huge issue. The termites, the roof, the hail damage, things like that, everybody's familiar with those. On a new construction, we're looking at all the things to make sure that it was built according to code. That way you don't have any expenses if you go to sell the house in a couple of years and then you turn around and have to fix things and bring it up to code. It's pretty expensive at times.
Now, I get this question quite frequently. Do home inspectors actually go on the roof, or do they do a glance of the roof, or is that just your preference?
Personally, I always get on the roof if it's a safe condition. Of course, in lightning storms, no. If it's too wet and it's tile roofs or slate or something like that, or a metal roof, you usually can't get on very easy. But you should. Texas Real Estate Commission says that a roof or an inspector will climb on the roof to inspect it if it's safe, in his opinion. So we get on the roofs. There's some inspection companies that don't. So always ask that, because it's more vital to see that from the actual surface than from the ground.
That's great, because I was reading something the other day where roof damage in Texas and in Denver, Colorado, due to the hail, is the most frequent probably issues that we're going to face out in the field. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed having home inspection not only protects the seller, but it also protects the buyer, and it also protects the realtor in a lot of cases as well, just to have that extra assurance.
That's correct.
Now, who can actually pay for a home inspection? Does it have to be the seller? Does it have to be the buyer? Could a realtor pay for the home inspection? How does that work?
Anyone can pay for it, but in the state of Texas, if whoever pays for it, that's the name that will go on the inspection report legally. Plus, the reason for that is if the realtor pays for it and I have to put their name on the inspection, then the owner of the property won't have the E&O or the errors and omission insurance that we have to carry to protect us from something that we might have missed. but it's really critical that the person that's on the report is who we're liable to and our insurance will cover.
That's very interesting. So if a realtor pays for it through the negotiations of the contract, what would happen is if something was to go wrong, your E&O would not cover that.
That is correct.
That's very interesting. That's
scary.
That's very scary, absolutely.
For the consumer.
So that definitely helps out a little bit of an understanding of a good negotiation tool as well.
Yeah.
So that's why you probably want to either negotiate in between the buyer or the seller to actually pay for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great tidbit. Next question I have is, how can a consumer, if they do order home inspection, which I always suggest everybody does, how could they make your job easier?
Oh, well, that's a good one there. One of the things that we come across a lot is when we have to gain access to the property. Of course, pets are a big thing. If there's big dogs there, that's a little startling for some of us. I've had properties where we couldn't even get access to the backyard because they said you don't go in the backyard because the dogs are mean.
Oh, wow.
So how do we inspect the back of a property? That really leaves it wide open for termites and foundation issues, any kind of water penetrations. But access is the key to everything. If we can't gain access to an electrical panel or a water heater or attic access or even a crawl space if it's a pier and beam, if we can't gain access, then we can't inspect it, and therefore that could become an issue later on where we have to go back to inspect it,
charge,
which may not be very easy in a short option period.
So everything's timed, right? Everything in the contract has a time frame that needs to be done, and that's absolutely a really good point as well. And in some aspects, if you can't go out and inspect the property and you have to do a trip charge or a re-trip charge, that can also get expensive over time as well.
And timing.
Absolutely. And then that way, you've got an option period or something of that nature that can run out, and that can also put yourself into jeopardy. What's another way that we can actually make life easier?
Well, if it's a vacant house, we always have to have the utilities on. So if the gas isn't on, the water's not on, the electric's not on, then that becomes a huge problem because those are major components that we do. We kind of synchronize our inspections so we can do a lot of the things at the same time, but if we have to go back out for checking gas appliances or water being turned on, it can be a big problem. But I would never buy a house that didn't have the water on because you don't know what kind of leaks might have been under it. But that's really a critical thing.
Absolutely. Another thing that I was just thinking about that can actually make life a little bit more easier, and possibly if you have remote controls, make sure you got the batteries and remote controls that work. I've actually had a situation where a home inspector came out to do an inspection on the house and the garage door opener didn't work. Well, that was kind of a problem because we didn't have any batteries laying around, so I had to run down, get the batteries, and thank goodness it took a little bit of time to do the home inspection. That could also have been a real situation as well.
Yeah, and ceiling fans, things like that. If we can't control the ceiling fan or the lights because they tuck the remotes away, we're not going to go digging through the drawers in their house looking for those things. So it's not really a good thing to do.
Now, do you also inspect, let's say, pools? Anything separate of just the home? Do you inspect wells? Do you inspect?
So some of the other items that we get, the extra items that go with the house would be like septic systems, whether it's an aerobic or a conventional system, a buried system. We'd have wells, we have propane tanks, we have swimming pools. Above ground pools, we usually don't inspect those, but we do all the in-ground pools. The remote controls or the programmable controls for a swimming pool, those are pretty important to check. With technology nowadays, we have a lot of systems that are operated from their phones or their iPads or some kind of computer. So there's sprinkler systems that we sometimes can't operate because we don't have any kind of a remote control for it. And there's not really a manual setting that makes it easy to do that.
Another real big one is obviously ACs in Texas. We use ACs even in the wintertime, right?
Yeah. So we operate the systems. We verify that things are working. If it's a gas heating system, we take pictures of the burners burning so that we know that they were working. So there's no questions about it. The newer electronic thermostats, the Nest thermostats, things like that, we will operate those. But that's really a critical thing to make sure the air conditioning and heating systems work here. You're absolutely right.
I've had a couple questions about also how about radon gas or any environmental issues? Do you take that to that level as well?
We do. So we have opportunities to where we can do the radon testing. It is a canister that has to stay in the house for at least 48 hours. And then it gets sent off to a lab. Luckily we have a lab here in the Carrollton area that does those, so it's a pretty easy gain access to that and have that lab work done. But radon gas is not a large problem in this North Texas area. Some people are very concerned if they moved from up north and they're used to basements where it is a more prominent problem. So there is opportunities to have that tested and checked if that's a peace of mind for them. But it's not typically any concern here. Even with the fracking that we have, there's a lot of concerns about
ready
that.
to ask about that.
Yeah, and in some areas we do see that. So it's just really a good peace of mind. But we have not seen really any radon problems whatsoever. And I talked to a lot of inspection companies in the area, and no one's really had issues with that at all.
That's good to know. Do you do lead-based paint? I get that question quite often.
The lead-based paint, that is more into a air quality and hazardous material type testing. Most people just go buy a little lead test thing from Home Depot and test it themselves. With lead-based paint on a house that was built earlier before 70s and we had lead-based paint, if you have pets or kids that like to chew on the walls, sometimes full-grown men probably chew on the wall a little bit. So if that's the case, or if you're doing remodeling and cutting out a wall and sawing down the drywall and the wood trim that has that lead-based paint on, then it becomes an issue. But most cases, there's 20 coats of paint on a house that age and it's covered up and it's not a concern whatsoever.
Now here's another issue that I run into. I'll ask a seller or a buyer, either one, have you had an inspection done on the property? And the first thing they'll say is, yes, my house is worth $100,000. There seems to be a confusion between an inspection and a appraisal. So why do you feel that there's a confusion in between the two?
Well, we started out with sellers, trying to understand what sellers see. We have the disclosures and stuff like that don't usually give a lot of information. If they're aware of a roof that was just replaced, they put that on the disclosure. But in most cases, they don't remember dates and things like that. I think with home inspectors and appraisals, they just see a person coming in the house that's evaluating their house. They don't really know or understand the difference. But with an appraiser, with home inspections, boy, as soon as you get a contract, you need to get a home inspector scheduled quick, especially what we're going into right now with this time frame. Our market's really hot and we get booked out pretty fast. With an appraiser, you'd always kind of wait to see what the home inspector says before you order the appraisal. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly why they get confused on that, but it definitely is something that we can get them educated on.
Yeah, so, one means value, one actually inspects for the functionality of the actual
condition
property.
of the happen. Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right, so to actually wrap all this up, as a home inspection, you suggest having a home inspection on every home?
I do. Even if you and since you brought that up, sometimes it's even a good idea for a pre-listing inspection. So if you're going to sell your house and you want to see what items will help your house sell better, we can do a pre-listing inspection, and that way we can help you to get your house in tip-top shape. Sometimes it's simple little things that are very inexpensive to fix. Sometimes it's just caulking windows to make it look really well maintained. So when it does have a home inspection done, the inspector won't sit there and see a house that's very poorly maintained, and then a lot of items won't show up in a home inspection report. Some of the times it might just be the bigger items that you're not wanting to spend the money to have fixed up front. But if you can get all the maintenance items taken care of, changing the air conditioning filters, caulking some windows, trimming the foliage away from your house, things like that, as the termite inspector's looking, he's not going to have a problem with those things. And it's just good to get the house cleaned up and looking really sharp even on the outside. So,
and another question here before we finish up here. Just because you get a home inspection, does that mean that everything has to be done according to the lender? Does that mean that everything has to be done to be able to sell the house?
That's a really good question. With VA loans and things like that, or FHA loans, there's some things that they can require to have done. But as far as us, we are just telling you the condition of the home, giving you as much information as you can on understanding the age of the equipment, checking the foundation, the roof, the windows, operational things, safety items, the ground fault protection, smoke detectors, things like that. We just tell you the condition of the home so you know exactly what you're buying and give you all the education to make a really smart choice on what you're buying. And so none of it has to be fixed. We never require things to be fixed. But there are sometimes in things that codes have changed since the home was built, And so our comments will reflect that it met code at the time the home was constructed. None of it has to be changed to bring it up to today's standards.
If you were going to wrap this whole thing up in 3 words or in 3 topics, what would those 3 be?
Oh, wow. Definitely making sure that we have access to everything that we need to look at.
Okay.
Maintain your home. Get it looking in tip-top shape and being well maintained. That includes your air conditioning systems and your heating systems and your water heaters. Make sure you don't have leaks.
So continuous maintenance.
Continuous maintenance. And then just realize that the home inspector is not there to beat your house up, no matter how long you've lived in it. And don't take it personal. It's just we're telling you the condition of the home. We are not the deal killers. We are just telling you the condition of the home.
That's excellent. That's excellent advice. Well, I want to thank you, Gordon, and thank you very much for your insight on home inspections and world of knowledge that you just shared with us. I want to thank everybody for listening in today, and we'll be back next month with Pros in the Know. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys.